Hello everyone, welcome to my today's video blog post about using ChatGPT and Qt for fun and profit. As you all know, ChatGPT has been released, or the ChatGPT API has been released just a couple of days ago, and of course that unleashes a lot of new things that could be done, and for me it was the time to actually start hacking and using ChatGPT's API more, especially in combination with Qt. And I wanted to share my findings about this topic with you. So what has been released a couple of days ago? So basically ChatGPT is a large language model from OpenAI, and OpenAI had already provided like the API for their other language models already like a couple of months ago and so on. And just a few days ago, they also released the API for their chat interface, or their GPT 3.5 model. And now you can also create your own ChatGPT clients, custom applications, ChatBot, and all sorts of things, of course. Yeah, they have an official like kind of playground. It's called Playground, where you can play around with like basically ChatGPT input. The nice thing, in addition to like the usual ChatGPT interface, is that first of all you can provide system messages, you can provide user messages, also predefined answers, and when the request is committed, basically via the API, you get back the results. And that's also basically the API interface. It looks very similar. So you have inside the request, basically you have the system message, a user message, a system message, and so on. So basically a list of messages and a couple of parameters that you can pass within one API request. For example, you can select the models. Currently there's only like the most recent ChatGPT model available, and a version that is frozen until a certain point in the future and probably is going to be removed. But we can expect that in the future there will be more models available here. And we can select the temperature. So basically that is kind of the randomness. Like if you turn down the temperature a lot, you will get very consistent results. And I've had quite good experiences with that for, let's say, for example, code generation. The maximum length, so the maximum number of tokens that you can use, or basically the request is generating. So you might want to tune that down if you have, let's say, a chatbot or something. But usually when you, let's say you want to create like something like a AI assistant or so, probably turning that up, then you have a couple more parameters that you could tune. I have never done that, but I guess it will be helpful for your application. So how can we combine that, or how could we use that API in our application? Basically, it's a very simple format. So we have an access token that you can download for your, of course you need an developer or basically a paid account for using that. The API is not free, but once you have set that up with your credit card, you can download the access token, and then you can start using the OpenAI APIs. Today I will talk about the chat API, but also about Whisper. That's basically OpenAI's speech to text mechanism, because actually I've created, or for demonstration purposes, I've created a ChatGPT client that is of course based on Qt and QML and makes use of the GPT 3.5 interface, but also of Whisper for speech to text, and also uses text to speech. Yeah, I will show you later, but basically I'm using also a third-party API for text-to-speech because, of course, on Linux, the text-to-speech mechanisms are not that great that come out of the box. So to get a little bit nicer experience, I've used the text-to-speech service as well. So how would you use that in Qt? So basically what I've done, if I created an example project, or actually a ChatGPT client kind of project based on Qt and QML, it's called Intellicute, of course, because it's a Qt-based ChatGPT client. Yeah. So let's take a quick look at what it looks like. So of course I've already opened it in the background. Yeah, it kind of looks like that. So you have a kind of a chat interface. I've created a default chat message. So basically the system message, when you use it in your application, is kind of used for creating a context for ChatGPT basically to complete your request. In this case, the context is act as a friendly and intelligent AI assistant. Your name is Intellicute. So yeah, actually when it responds to something like what's your name, it's going to say I'm Intellicute. UI is written by Qt with Qt and QML machine coder. This is just a personal advertisement, but it will also be used in the response, of course. Yeah, I've designed the application in a way that you can add and remove messages, but also you can use and create a normal request. So either by entering a text, let's say for example, we want to use it kind of as a chatbot. We could do following. What is your name, for example? Then the request will start and will be done in the background, and of course it's answering, my name is Intellicute, how can I assist you today? This is because it's currently configured more or less like a AI assistant chatbot. But the nice thing is, and that's one of the things I wanted to create, I wanted to have like an interface where you could talk to ChatGPT, and I've implemented that basically also using the Whisper AI or Whisper API from OpenAI. I still need to enable the auto speak now because I don't have it enabled by default, but then we can do something like this. Let's reset the chat and let's ask it, what is your name? So now the request is running in the background. Not sure if you can hear that actually, because I'm not sure how I've configured. Yeah, I hope you can hear it because I've configured the screen recording in some way, but basically it's also saying something. Yeah, that's it. So basically you have a talking ChatGPT client. That's nice, but we can also use it kind of to test different like OpenAI or basically ChatGPT requests and responses. So before we take a look at what are useful things that you could do with this, or general with the OpenAI or ChatGPT API, let's take a quick look at the application, how it could be implemented, or how have I implemented that with Qt. So basically, it's a Qt QML application. Let's go back. It's basically with live coding enabled. So live coding is kind of a thing that's possible with QML, where you reload the QML code whenever you have changes inside the source code. That is provided with basically a module that's also available in GitHub. But it's implemented in QML, so we have to implement QML elements basically, or QML items in C++. I've created an OpenAI request object. The request object takes access token, model, and so on. And basically what it's doing in the in the background, or actually internally, is it's creating an HTTP request using Q network request. So basically that's the way how to use Qt C++ basically to create HTTP requests. It creates the JSON content for the message, and it's sending that out to the OpenAI API endpoint. And we get back a response. So basically, in case of the chat client, we get a message back. If you use one of the other clients, like let's say, for example, the Code DaVinci or something like that, we get a single message back. It's currently not implemented in the UI, but basically we could also use the class for doing that. And there's a third endpoint, or basically a third implementation for sending the request, which is used for Whisper. So that's basically happening when we have, like, when we press the microphone button, we are sending out a recording with QML, the voice in wave format, sending that out to the OpenAI API for Whisper, and it's transcribing that in whatever language we are talking to our assistant, and then sending out the request, of course, via the ChatGPT API. And text-to-speech is basically implemented, first of all, using Qt's text-to-speech mechanism. So in the chat page, basically, we have using the text-to-speech interface from Qt. It's using whatever it's available by the system, which is not always good. On Linux, it's, depending on the language, it's either bad or okay. On Android and Windows, I've tested it on those both operating systems as well. It's okay, so you could use it, but of course we could also use a third-party API. In this case, I'm using IBM Watson, because it's a very good speech synthesization, especially in English. And if you have an IBM account and have IBM Watson set up, you can also use that here. Just have to enable it by using the Watson TTS. So that's also possible, of course. The nice thing about this is currently it just supports one chat, but you can also export the chat as a JSON format. Then you can use it, for example, to create an OpenAI API request in Python or something like that, or maybe store it for later usage. I mean, my plan is to create multiple contexts. You can have like multiple chats open, and also to create templates basically for creating chats. So let's maybe talk a little bit about what's possible actually via OpenAI's ChatGPT. I mean, probably you've heard a lot of things already on the news and so on, but what's rarely said is actually whatever you input here is, it really depends on, like the output really depends on what the input is, of course, and you can use it like, usually you have to do some kind of like so-called prompt engineering. So you basically design your prompt in a way that you get a good answer. For example, if you want to use the ChatGPT to generate code, you can do that, but of course your prompt needs to be defined in a certain way, else you get bad or mediocre output. But if you do it in a correct way, you get actually pretty reasonable results. For example, let's say I'm in some parts of this application actually generated by ChatGPT. For example, the file.io object or file.io QML interface. It's kind of like a very simple class actually, but it's basically providing an interface for reading and writing text to a file via QML, and that was like 90% generated by ChatGPT by just asking it to do it, basically to generate like a Qt C++ class. Let's take a quick look at this. How would that work? So basically we have to, I mean, the system message is not that important in this particular case, but we have to design our user message or first message we send to ChatGPT API in a way that we can make use of that. Let's say, for example, we want to generate a Qt C++ class, then we are asking it generate a Qt C++ class using QProperty, let's say, for example, called, I don't know, file.io. That allows reading and writing text to a file or text file, let's say, for example. And let's take a look at what we get. So when a chat request is sent, you get the message here, request is running. So in the background, of course, the API request takes some time. From my experience, it's a little bit like you don't get instant feedback like you would get on when you use ChatGPT, like the official web interface. So you don't have a streaming interface yet. But from my experience, it's actually usually a slightly faster because, of course, we don't have any additional checks and so on in the background. But of course, it takes some time until this is done. And we see actually it has generated a header file and a source file for that particular case. And you see it's actually pretty similar to what we have already have here. Creates a read and a write method. It has these properties generated, and the read method basically opens the Q file, uses a text stream to read in the data and so on. So it actually doesn't look that bad, I have to say. So yeah, using it ChatGPT for such tasks is pretty useful actually. What else can we do in terms of Qt and QML with it? For example, the network requests for, let's say, for example, OpenAI itself. I've created them mostly using actually ChatGPT. For example, send chat requests or something like that. What you need to do is you need to ask it basically to create a function. So we can also do that. Create a Qt C++ function that sends a HTTP request to the OpenAI API. Let's say let's do it that way. Of course, that's not very specific and so on, but so we'll get, I don't know what we get back, but you will see actually it's not that bad in the at least the first approach. We could do a lot better with the prompt engineering here, but in most cases that's already a pretty good starting point. Yeah, in the meantime, I can show you. You can also remove, copy, and delete messages, individual messages here. Yeah, so we see here actually it creates a send OpenAI request method that uses QNetwork request using the network access manager and so on to create a HTTP request to DaVinci Codex completions. I'm not sure if that API URL is still correct, but yeah, at least we can use it like kind of like a beta documentation. I usually don't use that like description because code is the better description in my opinion, but you see it's actually pretty useful for doing that. Other things we could do, actually ChatGPT is pretty good at writing Markdown stuff, so actually also QML, like the text edit that's being used here also supports Markdown, so we can actually ask it to create, like, let's say, a simple presentation or something, or basically write or explain Markdown to us. That's for example, an option. explain the basic markdown commands, and you will see, take some time of course to generate it, but you will see actually that we get some markdown formatting as well here. Yeah, and you will see actually that's already formatted kind of. You can disable markdown rendering as well if you want to. In this case, okay. Now it's also talking. I'm going to stop that, of course. I don't want to do that at the moment. Yeah, but we'll see it generates also some markdown code and can use that here. If we are not satisfied, or actually if we want to tune the prompts, let's say, for example, we want to use this whole prompt and so on for some, I don't know, other application, and we want to give it some kind of inputs that we want to have. Like some ideas we can take a look at for prompt engineering is in GitHub a project called Awesome ChatGPT Prompts, and we'll see there are already a lot of templates for doing all sorts of stuff. Let's say, for example, I don't know, act as a mathematician, or let's say if we have something a little bit easier here, password generator. Not sure if I would use that. JavaScript console, I don't think that's nice. Either IT expert is also pretty good. Maybe something like this. Let's use the emoji translator. Then we would just reset our prompt, add this here in the system message. And usually these prompts here are designed in a way that's used for the normal ChatGPT client. In this case, I would just do following. Instead of like having the first request already in the system message, I would just create a new user message. And then I would send the request. And let's see what we get back. So actually we get some emojis back. So apparently Qt, the QML text edit can also format emojis, and we'll see. Yeah. And then of course, whatever. Right? Yeah, so it looks pretty good. We can use ChatGPT for all sorts of stuff. Then we can of course export this chat. Let's say, for example, call it translate send emoji translator. And we can then use it later on. So let's delete this. Can then restore the chat, can continue with that, let's say, for example, regenerate something and so on. So actually that's quite useful and makes it easier to use this as a more powerful interface. Actually, I've successfully managed to create the code generator for a domain-specific language. I think that's also a very good application for this. Yeah. Of course, there are limitless options here. Just be aware, when you ask it something like scientific facts or whatever, ChatGPT sometimes, or actually often, interpolates stuff. So it actually can create alternative facts or something like that, especially on topics that are very opinionated, I would say, or if where mixed results can be found on the internet. It's sometimes just mixing up stuff and creating answers that are simply not correct, or basically not telling you that they're not correct, or that the whatever like you ask it is maybe a topic that's controversial or something like that. So I wouldn't necessarily use it for fact searching or something like that, but it's very good at for first draft research. Code generator is relatively good. Generating tests, actually, that's quite maybe something that's very nice as well. For example, I want to write a test. Like I've used it a lot for creating Python tests, but I could also try to create a test for something like that. Act as a Qt C++ test code generator. Test code for this method. We have markdown, so you can ask do this. And then in theory, you should try to create some test code. Sometimes the test code is not that good, but sometimes it's actually astonishingly good, especially if you just use it as a starting point. And remember, ChatGPT is usually extremely good for things that you can verify yourself. Let's say, for example, if you use it as a code generator, usually you can know like basically the output or what should be the output. So actually it's pretty good for that, because then you can personally verify it, but still a lot faster than just writing the code yourself. Of course, this request is going to take some time, but let's see what the output looks like. So it generated basically a mocking class for the network access manager. It generated a test method, setting the request access token and so on. So basically it's creating an OpenAI request like object. We haven't told it anything about like the class name and so on, so that's quite astonishing. It tries to interpolate here, and then it creates some Qtest calls and so on. Yeah. I don't want to evaluate this now at the moment, but it looks like we could use it as a starting point for something useful. Of course, the more input you give ChatGPT, the better the output is going to be. Important to mention here is also like I've heard that like it gets really like basically can give you really bad results if you send it too many messages or too many requests. So limit it maybe to 5 messages maximum. Don't give it too much different stuff. Of course, then you get odd outputs. But if you create the context like this, for example, act as a test code generator, whatever, like, and then you give it just C++ code or so to look at maybe, then the output is usually relatively good. So definitely something you should check out. I definitely believe that like tools like ChatGPT or large language models will be part of modern like software development, also part of the workflow very soon. Something else you could take a look at, and that I started to explore recently, is actually GitHub Copilot. Not sure if you already heard about it. If you use Qt Creator, we can't use it, but of course I've also using VS Code, for example, and it basically tries to give you code completions based on like large language model. I'm not sure if they're using Code DaVinci or not, like basically the OpenAI interface. Most likely they are, because like of course Microsoft has bought or is invested heavily in OpenAI, so it's very likely that they're using that. But what it can do, or what you can do with in combination with QML with it, is basically let's take a look at, for example, our chat view. And since we are in live coding mode, I keep that on top actually. We can use that to improve our application. Let's say, for example, we want to create a new like instead of having like a random markdown checkbox, we want to have want to make this like a radio button where you can select multiple options. I have GitHub Copilot enabled. You see actually that we have some kind of already suggestion here, menu separator, because probably it's interpolating that because I've already used the menu separator. But actually I want to use radio buttons. And you will see when I type radio, we get also already some kind of, yeah, code pre-generated. It's not necessarily good. I will just try to apply that and we'll see actually it creates a radio button. Yeah, so could possibly use that, for example, to change the message role to something else. But actually I just wanted to create like a radio button for the random markdown. So let's call it markdown radio. Yeah, random markdown doesn't look bad. Whoops. Check true, yes, on clicked. Context menu close, because we are going to use that instead of our random markdown checkbox very soon. So we have like, yeah, okay, this is already checked. Let's create another radio button. And it already does what I wanted to do actually. I wanted to render like plain text instead of render markdown as an option. So we have like the kind of switch between render plain text and markdown here. And now let's replace that. And here we go. Yeah, so that was pretty easy and simple task. I didn't even need to look any, like in the documentation or whatever, like the code completion worked very well. Of course, it really depends on the kind of code you're writing and so on. Sometimes the results are not correct, simply not correct. I personally can ignore them if that's the case. Sometimes it's even worth like the repairing that kind of like the generated code, but sometimes it's also worth just disabling the code generation or a GitHub Copilot and so on for some projects. I've personally found for QML the output is sometimes good, sometimes not. It's usually good for if you already have written some code. For Qt C++, the results are the same, I would say. Like basically, if you've already written some code, or if you're using something that's used a lot, like some kind of class and so on, it works very well. If it's something that's a little bit more exotic, let's say it that way, like some API and so on, the results are usually a bit more mixed, but definitely also worth to take a look at this tool. Yeah, to complete this, I'm just going to point you as well to the live coding I'm using here. So basically, need to go to my GitHub page where you can first of all find the Intellicute client, which I will continue to work on because I'm using it actually for personal use as well. But you'll also find the CPPQt live coding from me. Oh, not sure what I've done here. Okay, you can see where I have my mouse. Basically, it's a live coding environment for Qt and C++, and I'm using the Qt 6 branch. It's not the master yet, but if you're using Qt 6, you should use that. You're going to compile it with Qt Creator. It's going to be installed as a QML module, and then it basically tells you here what you need to do. You can also watch this video. But you don't need to do a lot with your code, but you will create a live QML files in addition to your main QML file, which basically contains this kind of environment, and then you can load and unload like QML files, and if it automatically like changes and then automatically reload the code. Okay, that's it from me today. Just to summarize everything, yeah, OpenAI's API for ChatGPT has been released a couple of days ago. I think it's great. It's definitely something you should take a look at if you're want to take a look at large language models and so on. Of course, the API is proprietary, so yeah, if you're a source enthusiast and so on, you may want to check out other large language models and so on. But I think it's a very powerful tool. It's probably going to be part of the tools that a software engineer is going to use in this near future. It will be, I guess, a standard thing that you need to design AI prompts. We definitely would recommend everyone to check that out. You can take a look at Intellicute, source code for Intellicute if you want to integrate it with Qt and QML. Or if you just want to have a desktop client and you already have like an OpenAI account that you can use. And also take a look at other tools, like let's say, for example, GitHub Copilot or other language models and so on, because it's definitely, there's more than ChatGPT, I would say. But on the contrary, be aware that ChatGPT also sometimes creates a lot of random results, or not so good results, let's say it that way. And I wouldn't use it for anything that you can't verify yourself. So if using it for code generation is great in my opinion, because usually as a software engineer you should be able to read the code as well and understand the code. So it's not a problem to verify that whatever it has output or generated is okay. But if you want to use it for, I don't know, checking up and looking up facts and so on, it's probably not the best tool. It's maybe good for a first draft and researching or looking up something very quickly, kind of like asking a friend or so about quick fact or so, but I definitely would fact check up afterwards. It's not like spitting out just facts or so. So definitely be aware about that. But if you are aware of that it's a great tool. Take a look at it. Yeah, and maybe also check out this project Intellicute, and maybe also Qt, C++, live coding. Okay, thanks. Yeah, why did I use Qt and C++ and not Qt and Python for the particular project? Because actually I made it, like the application also works on Android, so you can be compiled for Android. I may actually upload a version to Google Play, and yeah, it's not that easy, at least, to do that with Qt and Python. So else I would of course would have used Qt and Python for that, or Qt for Python. But since I want to also deploy it for Android, maybe someone wants to deploy it for iOS and so on, I used Qt and C++. Okay, thank you very much, and have happy hacking.